the Making with Place presentation. I'm here with Charlotte and Pri. We're part of a bigger team of 10 arts researchers, and we're basically doing a research project through York University, a community-based participatory research project led by the community agency Sketch Working Arts, and researchers and students from the Faculty of Environmental Studies at York University. So there's a team of research mentors, Lisa Myers and Sarah Flicker, research coordinators, Charlotte Lombardo, who is on this call with us, and then Phyllis Novak, and the research team, which consists of Beerus, Nigel Edwards, Jess Devitt, Roberta Burt Pringle, Jamal Nugent, Priya Pri Rehal, myself, Amara Sayed, and Olympia Trippus. So our objectives with the Making with Place project are to surface, build, and share knowledge that is developed by youth from oppressed communities, to create land-based and arts-based productions, explore public response to these productions to address and change stigma associated with youth homelessness and oppressed communities, explore artistic practice elements that seek to catalyze social change. So essentially, we believe that youth and folks living on the margins are culture creators, and the aim is to research like how we're using place in our practice and how we're creating through the arts in these times. So this first piece is by Jamal Nugent. It's called "What Does It Mean to Isolate?" Jamal's Instagram is ninjamal, at ninjamal, and he's been playing with some drone imagery here and creating some pretty incredible landscape pieces, documenting the areas in and around the Greater Toronto area. And then this next piece is by myself. I essentially aim to document the concepts of space, culture, mental health. I really just lean towards documenting my own mental health through my arts, through my storytelling, photojournalism, and through moving pictures, GIFs. And so the first photo is taken right at the beginning of quarantine. I know that a lot of people were experiencing like the stimulation of just being in a space with someone all the time, and just like the aim is to kind of to capture what it's like to kind of just take a moment, and then same with the second, really like creating your own space and creating your own kind of environment in during these times as the world has been taken over by COVID. Speaking of the world being taken over by COVID, the image on the right really stood out with me. It's a local Toronto pho place, which is a Vietnamese soup. And if you look closely, there's a huge kind of writing in the window that says "free mask with takeout." And this kind of image in general stood out to me, just because it was taken at like midnight, and it's really just shining a spotlight on the local businesses that are kind of struggling as a result of COVID. Just wanted to capture that. In the middle, it's a GIF of Virtual Pride, which is what Toronto Pride is doing this year. instead of a live Pride festival. And if you're not from Toronto, Pride is like one of the biggest things that happens in Toronto, and it's been kind of jarring to see that transition. And it's also just like, yeah, this is how people are taking these things and like rolling with them, really. And it's really kind of great to see how people change and adapt with these times. Um, on the left, I have my calligraphy. It says the image. The writing on the paper says it takes heart to witness suffering and hold hope. And so I will often have counseling and therapy sessions, and I'll take away some key points from them, and I like to, especially uh, since the mind has this negativity bias that I'm sure a few folks have heard of, where it leans towards negative things in order to prepare you for any, like essentially danger. Our mind is wired for danger, and I do calligraphy, especially in order to take away my affirmations, um, and like really just internalize them. And when you really detail and write something out, I find that it's really helpful with those affirmations. And my leg, I wanted to also do play with what calligraphy could look like, because I am going to be performing for Virtual Pride. I do performance as well, and I've been playing with the concept of what it would look like to perform with words on my body. Yeah, so that's me. Next up, we're gonna have pre-takeover, and yeah, talk about their work.
Thanks, Mara. It was so good to see your gifts and pictures again. That pho place is around the corner from where I live, and whenever I see it, I think of like your midnight shot. Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Pri, and the way that I've kind of been engaging with this project as an artist researcher is keeping weekly blogs of field notes and kind of like reflections on the work that I've been making, how it interacts with place, and how it kind of shows up in my work, if it does, if it doesn't, and also just kind of having something concrete to be able to reference back to kind of see what this process has been like. So we're currently in the second phase of our project. So I've made 6 different blog posts now. I would encourage you to check them out on my website if it's something that you find interesting. And this is an example of what one of them looks like. This is a third one. So from like when we were in the middle of the project, and I kind of started by reflecting the fact that we were in the 3rd week of the project, which made me think about, what week of the pandemic were we on? And we were just finished week 6 going into week 7 of the pandemic at the time. I like to reflect on kind of like what's happening in my life and like what was informing my work that week. And something that I'd been thinking about a lot was this circle of life strawberry image. And I'd painted it, and I no longer have this piece because someone had reached out to purchase it, but I've been photographing and recording work anyway, so it's really nice to kind of like have this to reference back to. I was able to use the money from selling the painting to get some more art supplies, and I've primarily been using Beam Paints, which is an Indigenous woman-owned company, and Anong, who is the owner, makes these paints out of Manitoulin honey from near the reserve where she lives, and also makes these pine and birch palettes from like natural materials from the reserve. And yeah, so her paints kind of became a recurring medium in the work that I've been doing throughout the project. And I find that painting with the natural materials is kind of one of the most I don't know, like emotional and moving ways that places kind of showed up in my work, and thinking about like how nature, physical place, and these materials are kind of recurring and like assisting in the creation of the things that I'm trying to think about, and like the natural images that come up as well. I hope that makes sense. Um, yeah, so usually in a blog post, I'll talk about like the different pieces I've made, some of them going forward into more recent weeks with the current anti Black racism that's kind of been taking over um, everything, really. And I say that not in a way that is like regretful, but rather just like with a lot of grief. And I think that this is a really important time. And so, if you look into my more recent blog posts, they focus a lot on like what's happening and what's affecting the absence of artwork in my creative practice, and my inability to create. And I'm grateful to kind of like keep track of those things as well. Yeah, so this is kind of like what a typical blog post looks like and how I've been keeping track of like field notes. I also keep an archive of my work on Instagram, and this is like what the last couple months have looked like in different phases of this project. And yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to share today, and I hope that gives you some insight into the kind of stuff that we've been making. Some of the other artists on the project do like collage work, great music. Jamal also does like video work, especially like Amara said, his more recent drone work has been just like super amazing, and I encourage you to check out his Instagram. Yeah, so thank you. I'm gonna hand it over to Charlotte to kind of talk a little bit about our coding trees and what we have going on there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Amara and Pri. You've shared some really powerful examples of a really extremely interesting process that we've been engaged in, and I'm very thankful to you and the rest of the team members for the input and the creativity and the imagination and the knowledge and the wisdom that has been emerging in our work. So I'm Charlotte. I'm doing a piece of student-led research along with Phyllis Novak on this project, and convening this space, but very much learning and engaging in a collaborative research process through a community-based perspective. And as you can see, there's been some really powerful knowledge and synthesis coming forward from the researchers on this team. So we thought we'd just end this presentation by talking about some of the key themes that are emerging. We are involved in a collaborative coding process with the entire research team, which has been very interesting and informative. And certainly place is where we started, is the place where we started with this work. And I should mention that this project started, as many things have in our world today, in the real world interactive space of when we were working together and had to move online very quickly because of the pandemic. But we still were able, and in fact, in many powerful ways, emerging a context of place and physical and internal concepts of place in this time of distance. So we're really, and lots of things that have been coming forward and have been being explored are things around history, colonization, geographies, land-based experiences through plants, through elements, through traditional knowledges, through very much physical realities and also internal realities that have to do with history, but also have to do with identity. And then, of course, which is so strong in these times, is the context in pandemic, both of COVID, but also of the very powerful a surgence of voice that's coming out around anti-Black racism, around histories of violence, state-based oppression, and really naming those things and exploring those things for the systemic inequities that they are. Land as place has emerged as one of our early and most resonant themes. The notion of place as the flora and fauna that surrounds us, but also the way that influences our art making and our senses of identity and self. Pri was just speaking about the indigenous paints that they use to inform their own practice and ground themselves to that work. Place's history feeds very quickly off of that, or very naturally off of that, in discussions of colonization, tradition, the way that place and land and history inform one another, the way that lineages and traditions can be part of art making and also part of questioning and disrupting what's around us through art. The idea of context, especially during this time of pandemic, the places that are being transformed around us, storefronts, spaces that are available to public, spaces that are being used by public or not used by public or used in different ways, and the body as a context and the grief that we hold in our bodies and that we explore during these times. And that leads us also into the concept of an internal landscape, the memories, emotions, and ideas that inform our making. And that also comes then naturally into how our art practice is about making place through both production individually and collaboratively. And one of the key resonant themes that's come out of practice is the idea of metaphor and story, artistic expression through metaphor. We had one discussion here that illustrates that about the dandelion and an artist who was working very much with the image of something that seems to, or is seen as invasive, but actually provides a lot of nourishment and beauty to our landscapes. So this as a metaphor both for place as a land, but also place as an internal landscape and sometimes the intrusive thoughts that can come up in our places, but also place as a way and a space and an important element of activism. Voice and sustainability are coming up a lot in these times, issues of marginality, challenges to even that terminology, and looking at the pandemic both from the perspective of COVID, but also from the histories of social violence that are being confronted, and the need and the ethics that we see reflected in our artists about taking action and using art to voice what needs to be changed and what is transforming and needs to be transformed in society. So these are some of our strong resonant themes. You've seen some very powerful work from Priya and Amara. We really would like to continue to share this project. We're entering into a phase where we're talking about our collective production, how we'd like to share our ideas and our learning and our research with the world through our art. So please do continue to keep in touch with our project. We really would love to engage you further as audiences and communities in this work. And a huge thank you on behalf of our entire research team. Thank you for listening, and thank you for engaging. We hope you continue to do so.